Hey guys, and welcome to Barrel Age Faith. Great to have you here today. I'm Kyle King, and I'm just giving you a quick update on some news that I've learned recently that there is like a evangelical Protestant church who have decided to journey into Holy Orthodoxy in the England area. I don't know the pastor. I haven't connected with them. I'm hoping actually that Transfigured Life with Father Jonathan Ivanhoff and Luther will interview him. There's been chat about that, so I'm hoping. But I just kind of wanted to just kind of share this news with you because I've seen it in other places, but I hadn't seen it really here. So I wanted to share that with you. So talk about that today. Talk about a few other stories that are similar to what's going on with their journey. Also for us to join in prayer to pray for them, and also talk about this dynamic of Protestants looking in, peeking in, journeying into Holy Orthodoxy. So first of all, let's go ahead and take a look here at Hope Church, which they're announcing is going to become Saint Hilda's church, which is she was a monastic saint in England. Talk about her in just a second. But what's going on here? I really don't have a ton of information to share with you besides their website. Basically, they wrote, we planted Hope Church in 2018. By the way, that's kind of evangelical language, by the way, when you say you've planted a church. I planted churches when I was a Protestant. I was part of church planting networks. We made a commitment to study the scriptures, learn to do church the way Jesus taught us to do. That commitment has led us to orthodoxy. We believe the Orthodox Church is the church that Jesus started on the day of Pentecost, and we are excited to be moving towards becoming Orthodox Christians ourselves. And then they say there's going to be a lot of changes for us in the coming months. So it sounds like they're kind of like in the middle of still kind of doing Sunday morning gatherings, but transitioning under the authorities and the hierarchs and bishops of the Antiochian Orthodox jurisdiction in their area. So that's what they've shared there. And then I can also share another part of their website, Hope Church in Halifax, which I was looking at the map. I was like, is this in England? Is it not? People that are from this area, when I start talking about it, they realize I'm not from there. And I say wrong things sometimes about the map of England and the UK and all those nuances. I don't live there, so I get it wrong sometimes. But anyways, Hope Church Halifax is becoming Orthodox, hopes to be received into the Antiochian Orthodox Christian Archdiocese, British Isles, and Ireland in the late summer 2025. I'm sure you all have questions about that. I mean, I don't know what this process looks like. It kind of looks differently. And when we talk about what does your prayer rule look like? What does your fasting look like? And we always say, talk to your spiritual father. Well, these situations, first of all, they're not for everybody. They're not for all Protestant gatherings, but for some, there can be this path under the guidance of bishops, and then it's going to be guided by them. So that's what it looks like. It's been happening. They've been exploring orthodoxy for 5 years. And so they're leading, I don't know how many people, I don't know, what percentage. I just don't know those things. I've heard stories like this before, and maybe like half the congregation comes, 75% maybe start, and then it kind of slowly lose a few people here and there. But it's a beautiful thing. And so, pray for them, be encouraged. This is a pretty cool thing that's happening. Transfigured Life recently interviewed Scott Klaudt, who was the pastor of Zootown Church, and he's a catechumen, I believe. I haven't gotten a recent update, but Pastor Scott was and is a passionate person, like in the sense of like he loves Jesus Christ. He loves sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with the world, and he's excited to become Orthodox. So if you remember on Transfigured Life, they interviewed him. I'll show you a quick little clip. Of Pastor.
So you've been lied to, Protestants. We've been told Martin Luther and John Calvin returned us to the faith. They did nothing but create a brand new religion. It's a brand new religion. Luther took out 4 books of the Bible because he didn't think they were legit. He took out James, Hebrews, Jude, and Revelation. Now let me ask you, who gave him the authority to do that? He did not have the authority to do what he did. And when he was asked
called
then
the High
here
Line
he
of
is being
Montana, kind of next
interviewed
to
by
Canada,
Father
in a little
Jonathan
small town called
Ivanhoff
Havre. And then I moved to Idaho.
Luther.
Jesus was so brilliant, man. He was so brilliant to come at the time he did.
And so you can watch that interview. It's a very good interview. But when I was reading the story, it made me think of their interview with Scott. And of course, we continue to pray for Scott and his journey with his family into Orthodoxy. It's not easy to resign from a church. I was just getting started as a church planting pastor when I resigned many years ago, and it's just not easy. It's hard because your heart is tied to those people. You love them, but further up and further in where Christ is, he's going to call you to deeper truth. And you've got to go. You've got to go. Otherwise, you're going to lose a part of yourself if you don't go. And so definitely check out that interview if you haven't heard it. There's also the whole story of the Evangelical Orthodox Church. These were a group of people, I think in my area, Indiana. They were people who started out in the Evangelical Institution Campus Crusade, started by Billy Graham, the great, Protestant evangelist. And then they began having Bible studies. They formed groups, discovered, oh my goodness, the early church doesn't look like Protestantism, and they began exploring Orthodoxy. They started kind of a non-canonical Evangelical Orthodox church, from my understanding, and eventually they were received into the Antiochian church. That's the story of Father Gilquist. I believe his son's a priest in Bloomington, Indiana, of All Saints Parish. I'll show you a real quick clip of them. And I believe they started Conciliar Press, which eventually was absorbed into kind of like Ancient Faith Radio. So Father Gilquist's own story reminds me of what's happening here in this story. Here's Father Peter.
And after a couple of tough false starts, we were contacted by an Antiochian priest who invited us to meet with the Patriarch of Antioch that summer. And that resulted in our being received in 1987 into the Antiochian Archdiocese of North America. That is back in our days in Campus Crusade in the early 60s. And there are a group of us that worked incredibly close together in the organization. And Father John Braun, then John Braun was the national field coordinator, which basically meant the national speaker. And I was a regional coordinator for the Big Ten, and Father Gordon Walker at that time, I believe, was the African director. And we got together every morning for Bible study and became very, very close friends. And in the course of each summer out at Arrowhead Springs, our conference center, we'd spend 2 months there in the summer, and we'd, as I say, meet every morning. And by the summer of 1966, we were studying basically the grace and mercy of God. And that became very life-changing for me to realize that in this high-powered organization that you still lived by the mercy of God and not by the letter of the law.
Amen.
At that time. And so as we continued these summer studies, by 1967, we realized that we probably needed to resign from Campus Crusade because theologically we felt to do what we were doing, which was evangelism, we really need to be tied to the church. And of course, for a Protestant, that poses a huge question, which one? At that time, Dr. Martin Marty at the University of Chicago.
Well, if you want to listen to more of that talk, you can find that, I believe, on Theria. Also, Ancient Faith has been posting recent interviews with Father Peter, and you can hear more of his story. But I wanted to bring that up just with you because it reminded me, this story reminded me of some of those stories. And I know some other priests, like Father Patrick Cardian in Virginia. He was part of the Charismatic Episcopal Church, sort of this convergence Protestant movement, integrating liturgy and the sacraments and all sorts of things. And then eventually they were received into the Orthodox Church. And so you'll find these stories happening. And the question is, will these become more prominent? Will these will they happen more? I don't really know. I know definitely at the individual level, it's happening. But when it comes to groups coming in like that, it requires, I'm sure, a long conversation with the bishops. I know that Father Peter, they contacted the Patriarch of Antioch, and that's how that path went. So anyways, What I wanted to talk about today was not just that, but also how this is a new opportunity, because we had a missed opportunity 500 years ago. There was a dialogue between the Lutherans and the Orthodox, the theologians in the Lutheran world, and the Patriarch of Constantinople, and it's been fairly well documented. You can buy a book on those exchanged letters. Of course, the Lutherans had broken off of the Roman Catholic Church for various reasons, but they began dialoguing with the Orthodox Church, really looking for some like affirmation, which affirmation that they had it all right. But the Orthodox Church, of course, said, well, you need to change, these things. Now imagine imagine they had submitted to what the Orthodox Patriarch was saying, and they came in. Can you imagine how the West would have gone after that for the next 500 years? It would have been fascinating to see large sections that the Lutherans had come into the Orthodox Church and perhaps followed by the Anglicans. The whole story of the Western Europe and the United States, North America, South America, it could have looked quite different. But of course, that didn't happen. And so I feel like God is giving us the second opportunity to begin a dialogue with Orthodoxy, and you see many people beginning to respond. It's pretty cool. There's an article, I'll share it with you, on ancient faith, written by a former Lutheran pastor who became Orthodox. And he gives us a little taste of the dialogue between the Lutherans and Orthodox. There are many positive things actually said. The patriarch was quite acting very much like a loving father, saying, hey, these are the good things. We agree with these reforms that you want because we disagree with actually some of these aspects of theology where Roman Catholicism went. But you have these issues. And the Lutheran theologians actually criticized the Orthodox in the final sort of aspects of the dialogue. The Lutherans wrote, it is apparent to us that you have greater regard for the traditions of the church, which you have received by succession from hand to hand, and nothing of all that you have inherited from your fathers do you willingly concede. Such traditions and ethos in the church, which we understand were in use even at the time of the apostles in the early church, we do not reject it all, but we gladly practice them if indeed they are useful to the needs of our time. Listen to that last part. We do not reject what you have all been handed on to since apostolic times, but we want to only use what's useful for the needs of our time. That right there is the heresy, the heterodox thinking. We only want what's useful. Pragmatic thinking, right? The nectar, the gold that the apostles have given to us that you see, unanimously practiced in all of the ancient traditions, we should cherish. We should not disregard. And so that's that was the kind of the last few letters. There was a final kind of like, okay, let's end the dialogue because we're obviously not going to end up on the same page. They were not on the same page with the sacraments. They were not on the same page with the veneration of relics and the saints, icons. They were not on the same page with sharing the creed, a number of different other issues, but they were on the same page with other issues, which we could talk about. But it was a missed opportunity. So I do believe that we're in this beautiful opportunity now, a second chance by God for the West, for the Protestant West to be received into Orthodoxy. Now, of course, we're also seeing this happen with Roman Catholics too, though not at as the similar type of rate. So, anyways, what is a Protestant to do? Well, I think it begins with studying the Fathers. Is a good book that I just recently, and I'm still working through it, but I interviewed the author and I've read parts of it. Father Joseph Lucas, a patristic scholar and priest. Our interview should be coming out any day. How to Read the Holy Fathers, a guide for Orthodox Christians. This is pretty important because many people, and this is what I experienced in college and under Protestant professors, you learn about the Fathers in piecemeal and within a different system. So you're not within the paradigm of the Fathers. You're also not reading in the genre of the Fathers, the liturgies, the hymns, the ascetical treatises, the catechisms, the doctrinal, treatises. Like there are letters, there are biblical commentaries, all sorts of things that you have to sort of read in context. And I've noticed that when we have the dialogue about the fathers, we're not always seeing that. We're not always seeing that context. So, anyways, I highly recommend this book for Protestants, but also Orthodox Christians who are really trying to understand how to read the fathers. It's a good guide. When I was in college, oh, where's that book? Oh, there it is. Pause. Let me go grab the book. Okay. When I was in college, I read a book called How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth. And it taught you about exegesis, eisegesis, talked about genre. This book does the same thing, but it's according to the fathers, of course, with the Orthodox mind. This is a Protestant evangelical book, but it was a hot seller. This was taught in many evangelical Protestant uh, uh, Bible colleges, universities, seminaries about how to read the Bible. This book is kind of similar in tone, but how do we address the fathers and not just quote mine? So that's a good book. Also, I always encourage people to check out Father Andrew Stephen Damick's book, Ignatius of Antioch. Good book, Bearing God. You just read his letters, of course, his 7 letters, which were life-changing for me 20 years ago, but this book's a nice accompanying guide to that for Protestant seekers. If you're really interested in kind of like Reformation history, there's different books that you can read. Of course, there's Rock and Sand by Father Josiah Trenum, which is actually quite readable. Um, whenever you whenever you endorse any historical work, like I'm gonna agree. If I'm recommending it, I'm gonna agree with most of it. But there might be like tidbits that I'm like, oh, it could have been said maybe a little bit differently, or it could have been said added this context. But for the most part, this book is I loved this book. It was so enjoyable. But with any history, any church history book, it's like it's very difficult to get everything perfect, and everybody's gonna have different opinions about little tiny aspects. But that's not important for those who are just kind of like wanting to get um, a broad understanding. I also just finished this book called The Truth Every Roman Catholic Should Know About the Orthodox Church by Clark Carlton. And he is he holds an MDiv from St. Vlad's Orthodox Theological Seminary. And he also holds a PhD from the Catholic University of America. And I've read lots of books kind of engaging Catholic Orthodox thought. I know many Protestants are. I was just talking to somebody yesterday, like big Protestant intellectuals right now are like choosing between Orthodoxy and Catholicism. And so, again, I may not agree with everything in this book, but I agree with the bulk of it, the majority of it. So this is a good read. The Truth by Clark Carlton, What Every Roman Catholic Should Know About the Orthodox Church. If you're trying to survey both claims. Now, if you're obsessed about the icon controversy, you got to check out Michael Garton's book, Early Icons, which came out at Christmas time. Wonderful book. I've read through most of it, interviewed Michael. Obviously, if you watch my channel, he's been on there quite a bit recently. Good friend, very encouraging to me, great brother in Christ. But he engages a lot of scholarship where like images of the early church go. He's really showing that they go beyond just decorative purposes and didactic. That means teaching, but they're also involving a type of veneration. Now, that word veneration has a range of meaning, and it can mean all sorts of things. And that's where like the heat of the dialogue is. But if you can just show it goes beyond didactic into contemplation, into commemoration, into acts of adoration, not adoration in the sense of worship, but adoration where you're showing acts of love and devotion. He does a good job showing that the scholarship uses this type of language, like art historians, liturgical historians, archaeology, those types of historians Good book. This is volume 1. There's going to be a 3-set volume, so definitely check this book out. Fun book, Welcoming Gifts, Sacrifice in the Bible and Christian Life. This addresses how the word, this is a deep dive on the word sacrifice. You know, when I was in college, you know, you would do like a whole word study on a Greek word, and you would learn, you would read hundreds of thousands of pages about one Greek word and how it's used through all sorts of ways. And this book is doing that with the word sacrifice. And it's actually a really good book by Father Jeremy Davis. And he takes you through the Old Testament, he touches on church history, the New Testament, and can really help Protestants look at the atonement, the nature of sacrifice from an Orthodox perspective. And I know that the West, oftentimes, there's different Western critics who will criticize Orthodox theology for being anti-Western. You know, I think Father Jeremy is quite generous, actually. But he shows really the original word of sacrifice here. But it's people can criticize it or critique it. They're very much welcome to. But I think this would be a helpful introduction for Protestants looking into Orthodoxy. How do I make sense of sacrifice? Good book. Also, this is a classic, Orthodox Worship, which takes you through the liturgy of Orthodox worship, takes you through the whole divine liturgy at the end, but also takes you through the Old Testament, the worship in the early church, the worship in the Old Testament, the worship that we are currently experiencing in the divine liturgy. So this is a classic that Ancient Faith republished, and I've been really, really enjoying it. I can understand why it was a popular classic. And of course, Father Stephen DeYoung's book, The Religion of the Apostles, has been a hot seller, helping people dive deeper into the Old Testament. Father Stephen DeYoung, Seraphim Hamilton, there's many authors. Again, Father Andrew Stephen Damick in his book, Lord of the Spirits. Of course, we all know that podcast. You know, they're really helping us sort of unlock a deeper meaning to the Old Testament. Nothing weird or Gnostic. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, Protestantism oftentimes distorted our reading of the Old Testament. We missed so many layers. If you're, and I was talking about this with Father Joseph Lucas in our interview, which you'll see, experiencing the divine liturgy week in, week out transfigures your eyes to be able to read the fathers and be able to understand certain things about the Old Testament and New Testament in ways that are just profound. And so when you are worshiping as an Orthodox Christian, you can see connections in really cool ways. So anyways, put that book back on the shelf. Let's see here. Got a few comments coming in. Someone says, "Hey, I'm a Catholic and I enjoy your channel." You know, I try to. Many of my close friends are Protestants and Catholics. I'm Orthodox. I have many close Orthodox friends too. But what I'm saying is, you know, life's too short not to love our Lord, love everybody, be cordial, be hospitable to all. This is my style, and I hope Orthodoxy, the beauty, truth, and goodness of Orthodoxy, just draws people. Draws people to Christ uses Orthodoxy to draw people to himself. Looking at some more comments. Someone said Protestants are really just Orthodox without icons. I'm not sure what that quite means. Someone said I have huge respect for Protestant pastors that have given up money, their livelihood to convert to Orthodoxy. Yeah, I mean, oftentimes you have to find new jobs, right? Like you've gotten degrees in ministry and you've got to resign from the very thing you love and go sell insurance, sell real estate, sell cars, whatever, to take care of your family in order to become Orthodox. And so there is a type of sacrifice. Of course, nothing compared to the martyrs, nothing compared to what the apostles did, but it does show you something profound that's been moved inside of them that I think really attracts a lot of people when they see um, someone giving up that much to become um, Orthodox. Somebody asked, "Is this church mainline or evangelical that we were talking about originally?" Well, it seems like they're evangelical because they have like a guitar up front. I really don't know. I haven't talked to the pastor there. Again, I'm hoping Transfigured Life will interview them. But it looks like they were engaging in a liturgical style. So you do find evangelicals, and I have some friends doing this, evangelicals engaging in liturgical worship. And so are they high church? They're not high church, but they're becoming more high church. Like they're thinking sacramentally, they're thinking liturgically, they're thinking with the fathers. I have a friend who heard a sermon talking about, well, the Orthodox Eastern approach to the Garden of Eden story is this. And he sent me some screenshots of the PowerPoint slide at their mega church. I'm like, wow. Yeah, that's right on, man. That's great. So it's spreading. Orthodoxy in the fathers are spreading in ways that we can't always see. Someone said, Roman Catholics are the first Protestants. Luther just went more extreme with it. Remember which church gave birth to Protestantism? That is a long conversation. It's funny. Well, it's not really funny, but the East and the West would sort of like accuse each other historically of each side being Judaizers. Like, oh, you've got big beards like Aaron the priest, so you're like Judaizers. And then the East would say, you've got unleavened bread, you're Judaizers. And so, but what's funny is that now the conversation is like Catholics will call Orthodox, oh, you're Protestants because you rebelled against the Pope. Then Orthodox will accuse Catholics of being Protestant because some of their theology seems quite innovative, which of course I was a Catholic, became Orthodox, so I agree. But what I'm saying is the hot take is like everybody accusing each other. Catholics accusing Orthodox of being Protestant and Orthodox accusing Catholics of being Protestant. Really, we just have to get into the nitty-gritty of theology, right? What does it mean to be a Christian? What did Christ intend to give us? What's the paradigm of the apostolic tradition and the fathers? And this is where I believe that Orthodoxy just reveals who she is, the church. It is the church of the fathers. What you have in 2025 is going to look the same, 100 years, 200, 300 years from now. Yeah, do we sometimes have squabbles between patriarchs and hierarchs and all that? Yeah, sure. That's been happening since day one. And people ask me that. That's probably the number one question I get asked is, what about the division in Orthodoxy? It's like, well, just study some church history, right? And you'll see that there's always tension between jurisdictions and areas. Uh, and when you read a book even like this, the first 1,000 years of Christianity, I believe Robert Louis Wilkins is a Catholic, but he's even got a whole section in his book about like when Georgia, the country of Georgia, became autocephalous, became autonomous. Of course, it's following the canons and the conciliar model of the church, but people get really hung up on that sort of like, oh man, you're so divided. But it's like if you just study some church history, you really begin to see it's really the same tensions that you would see in the first millennium. Things are never going to look perfect. Like Orthodoxy is the true church, but things will never look perfect until Christ comes back and he makes all things new. He transfigures the universe. He heals us and resurrects us. We look forward to that day, hopefully sooner than later, but we got to make sure that we're ready. That's what Lent, that's what the Great Fast is all about, right? And man, I took it more seriously as a Catholic than I did as a Protestant, but now as an Orthodox, it's like, oh man, repentance, 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 and you realize how short you fall. How I fall short of what Christ asks of us. But that's what the Great Fast is all about. Get back on the horse. What other questions we've got here? the let's see here. The Protestant Twitter world has some real weak sauce comments on Garton's book. Yeah, Michael Garton's book here. You know, it's great that he got this endorsed by Father Stephen Bingham, who's done a lot of scholarship in the area of icons. And I think what we're going to see with Michael's book is we're going to see scholars engaging his proposals in the case that he's making for icon veneration. You know, if you get into the secular world, people aren't always even asking these questions. They're not in the Protestant Catholic, Protestant Orthodox debate on. They're just kind of studying, okay, here's images. And they'll talk about how they're used in cultic usage in the same way that they were used in Greek and even Jewish sources. You know, my recent interview with Michael talked about how everything under the arch at Duro Europos was venerated. For example, of course, if you go to the pagan shrine of Mithras, that arch had a pagan god that they were offering worship to. Well, we don't want to do that. But when you get to the synagogue, of course, the synagogue is filled with images in 250 AD, probably 230 AD. The synagogue's filled with images, and under the arched space, what's there? The Torah, which Jews totally venerate. I mean, spend a little bit of time in a synagogue, and you'll see them venerating the Torah. Not worshiping, but honoring, commemorating, venerating, kissing the Torah. And so when you get to the Duro Europos Church, what's underneath the arch? Well, it's not a pagan god, obviously. It's not the Torah. It's Christ, the Good Shepherd icon. And you're praying Psalm 23 towards the shepherd. You're being baptized into the Good Shepherd. You're contemplating the Good Shepherd. You're committing allegiance. That's what faith means, allegiance to the Good Shepherd. All these things right there with the Good Shepherd. So anyways, yeah, I mean, it's going to be, I think we're actually kind of getting started with this whole conversation. And I think Michael is actually proposing for scholars to begin sharpening their language, honestly, in regards to this conversation, which not all scholars are always up to date on that, because they might be trying to answer different questions. All right, guys, thanks for joining me today. I wasn't actually planning on doing a live stream, but I saw this news yesterday or the day before that. I'm like, this would be fun to really share, and then just talk about this whole trend. And so, guys, thanks for joining me. You know, if you want to support Barrel Age Faith, only $5 a month. You can find my link on barrelagefaith.com. This kind of makes Barrel Age Faith able to exist. And I've got 7 kids. Be blessed to have your support if you're able to, or even just a one-time gift. But always, I always say this: give to your parish, give to the poor, give to missions, evangelization. But if Barrel Age Faith is blessing you, and you believe it's blessing other people to inquire into Orthodoxy, a little bit of support actually makes a huge difference for me. So you can find that there if you want. I'm also going to have a lot more paid exclusive things coming out here in 2025. Things that are related both to sort of the Protestant Catholic Orthodox dialogue and why I became Orthodox. So you'll find some deep dives, particularly in the afterlife. The topic of purgatory and the intermediate states, kind of the thing that I focus on the most. But I can also talk about ecclesiology, infant communion, the Trinity, all these issues that we're wrestling through. And so the courses will take you through a deep dive for paid subscribers. But I'm also coming out with a series that's for free. Yesterday I posted how fasting, the beauty of fasting, the joy of fasting actually was my introduction to the Orthodox Church back in 20 years ago, but really kind of 15 years ago. And so beauty can bring us closer into the faith that Christ gave. So if you want to support this work and you believe it's important, would really appreciate it. But again, there's priorities, your parish, missions, the poor, all those things first. All right, guys, have a blessed day. If you are interested in the Wisephone, I use the Wisephone every day. It doesn't have a web browser, doesn't have email, but it does have apps that are vetted to make sure that you're only seeing clean content that's not addictive. So like you can, banking apps, or an app that you might need to drive a tractor, or an app that you might need for XYZ. Even if the app's not on here, I know the Wisephone people, and they'll actually add the app after they vet it. So it's freeing people from doom scrolling, from addictive behaviors. When I go home, I'm not on my I'm not on my phone because I'm hanging out with my kids. I cook, play, clean, put the kids to bed, bath time, all those things. And I don't have to worry about you guys commenting on my stuff because I don't get notifications on this thing, which is a very freeing thing. If I go to a restaurant with my kids, no distractions. That is a great gift. If I'm at the playground, pushing my little girl on the swing, no distractions. So I'm finding that people are being freed by using the Wisephone 2. The Wisephone 1 was awesome, but it was very minimalistic. Not everybody could do it. I believe most people can make the switch. It's going to be hard. Yeah, but it's awesome. And the spiritual benefits for your prayer life, for your family life, your church life are really great. So I hope you'll consider the Wisephone 2. You can get $40 off with my discount code KING. All right, guys, have an amazing day. Begin preparing for the great fast. All right, we'll see you later next time. Bye-bye.